Every morning I brew my coffee, step out onto the porch, and gaze at the row of trees my grandfather planted along the path leading into the farm. They've stood there for over 60 years. Quiet, steadfast, like how land should be respected, until that morning. The roar of engines shattered the air, the ground trembled. And at the end of the road, 10 massive bulldozers blocked the entrance to my land, led by a woman in a tailored suit, holding a clipboard like she was commanding a firing squad. I set my coffee down, not because it was hot, but because I knew this morning I wouldn't need caffeine to stay awake. I heard the excavators before I saw them. The roar of their engines tore through the peaceful morning. My coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. I rushed to the window and froze. A massive bulldozer was ripping into the edge of my driveway, churning up soil and stone that had rested undisturbed for decades. 2 other machines flanked it, rumbling like predators. In the middle stood a woman in a sleek business suit, holding a clipboard like she was commanding a military operation. I burst out onto the porch barefoot. The morning breeze was cool, but my blood was boiling. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing on my land?" I shouted, the engine noise not nearly loud enough to drown out my fury. The woman turned, not startled, not even flustered, instead, a smug smile. "The kind you only see on someone who believes the law is on their side. I'm Amanda Greaves," she announced, her voice sharp and crisp like she'd just walked out of a courtroom. "President of the Silverwood Meadows Residential Council. We're permanently closing off this illegal access point." She waved a stack of documents with bright red seals like they were summonses from the Supreme Court. "You've ignored too many notices." I nearly laughed. If only she knew who she was dealing with. I had served as chief of county land survey and zoning for 32 years. I was the one who drew the original property lines back when her subdivision was still a patch of wild grass. And, yes, I own every map, stamp, and zoning file for 50 miles in every direction. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, this land has never belonged to her HOA, never will, and was never part of their jurisdiction. 6 months ago, I left the county office, the job I'd given my life to, and returned to the farm my grandfather left behind. My wife passed away from cancer 3 years ago. I needed quiet. This place, 120 acres, a timber frame house, is my home, my family's home. Every fence post, every stone on the path tells a story. I had a plan. Tend the barn in the morning, plant vegetables in the afternoon, lie on the porch at night and listen to crickets. A quiet life. Clean. Drama-free. I was wrong. It started with a slip of paper taped to my mailbox. Violation of landscaping aesthetic code, subject to fine if not resolved. I chuckled. Aesthetic what? I muttered, filing it in a brand new folder I labeled Crazy HOA. Then came the next letter, this one certified. The sender? Amanda Greaves, president of the Silverwood HOA. Inside, she accused me of building an unauthorized driveway across HOA land, demanding I pay $18,000 in unauthorized usage fees, or face immediate access restriction. I showed the letter to my neighbor, an old Army vet named Donnie McKay who lives 2 fields over. "These people are nuts," Donnie said. "Your farm was here when I was still running around in diapers. That neighborhood didn't even exist till 2008. They don't have a leg to stand on." He was right, but I didn't realize just how far Amanda Greaves was willing to go. And this morning, I saw the extent of her madness. 3 excavators, 2 security goons, and a scene staged like a government demolition order. No court documents, no police. Just an HOA acting like it had the right to bulldoze someone's private driveway with heavy machinery. Greaves looked at me like I was a trespasser tagging the marble walls of her luxury condo. "This driveway cuts through our community's shared green space, 32 feet, she said. "We've been lenient for far too long. Today, this trespass ends." I glanced at her documents, stamped, signed, included a map. I flipped through. One line caught my eye. Signature of County Survey Chief, certified 2022. One problem. I was the County Survey Chief in 2022, and I never signed any such thing. I locked eyes with the bulldozer operator, a man named Gary, per the patch on his shirt. "Mr. Gary," I called out, "if you proceed, you'll be liable for destruction of private property based on forged documents. Are you ready to go to court with me?" Gary swallowed hard. I saw a sweet bead on his forehead. Amanda frowned, but I'd already planted the seed of doubt. I didn't need to yell. I had something stronger than threats. The truth. And the original records for this entire county. I spoke just loud enough for everyone to hear, especially Lucy Powell, my neighbor filming from across the road. "Ms. Greaves, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life. And I'm going to show this whole county what happens when someone abuses their power. I've lived long enough to know when someone waves paperwork in your face and flashes a smile, they're either selling you insurance or about to steal the most valuable thing you own." And that morning, the woman named Clarissa Moore, president of the brand new Silver Pines Estate Enclave, wasn't holding an insurance policy. She was holding a falsified map and a stack of forged documents. 3 bulldozers loomed in front of my gate, snarling like mechanical beasts, blocking the only access road my family's farm has used since the 1960s. I was born here. My father hammered in the boundary posts by hand. My grandfather sweat through every nail that built our barns. And now, a woman dressed for a board meeting stood in that very driveway, ordering the erasure of all that history. I stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel that's older than her subdivision, eyes locked on Clarissa. "I'm Jack Renair. This is my land, and I don't recall inviting anyone out here this morning." She smiled, a plastic grin as fake as the blush on her cheeks, and waved her papers right under my nose. "You've received multiple warnings from the council. You are unlawfully using our property, according to the updated maps from last year. We've been patient long enough. As of today, we are formally sealing off this unauthorized access." I glanced at the map. Freshly printed, red-stamped, looked official, but completely wrong. With the eyes of a former county zoning surveyor, it took me all of 10 seconds to spot the fraud. Parcel numbers didn't match. The official seal from the office I used to run was forged, and they were dumb enough to fake my own signature. "You've falsified documents. You're standing on my land, and you're breaking the law." Clarissa didn't flinch. "You may pay the penalty and sign the revised boundary agreement. $25,000 to maintain temporary access rights. Or we proceed with fencing it off today." Behind her, I noticed the excavator operators shifting uneasily. One of them, Carl, a sunburned, middle-aged man with steady hands and tired eyes, took off his cap and nodded respectfully toward me. "Just following orders, Mr. René. But if those papers are fake, I'm not sure we should be doing this." That's when I heard Lucy, my next-door neighbor, a retired investigative journalist, step up, phone raised. She was filming the entire scene. "Keep going, Jack. Let the whole world see this." Clarissa's brow twitched. For the first time that morning, I saw a crack in her armor. "You have until noon to make a decision. After that, I won't be offering leniency." I took a step back. Not retreating, just resetting my stance. I never walk into a firefight without checking my rifle, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let them bulldoze my past without digging up the truth buried in every inch of this town's history. I've seen my fair share of botched maps in my life, but I'd never seen anyone dumb enough to forge my own signature, and then wave it in my face, in the very county where I served as head of land surveying for over 3 decades. Clarissa. Moore thought she was up against some old farmer who'd gone soft? Not even close. I immediately called Bruce Holloway, deputy director of the county land office and my best friend since college. On the other end of the line came a sigh as long as a government career. "She's at it again, huh?" I've heard. Whispers about some boundary amendments submitted 3 years ago that smelled fishy. Sounds like we've got real smoke now. I need everything on file for Silver Pines and my land. Originals, amendments, everything. I'm headed to the county building now. Lucy drove me in her beat-up pickup, tires spitting gravel as we hit the county road. On the way, she filled me in on why Clarissa was going this far. She used to be a big-name real estate developer, ran a project called The Heights. It crashed and burned 7 years ago. Investors lost everything. Since then, she's been clawing her way back. Silver Pines is her last roll of the dice. I nodded slowly. Everything was beginning to clear like morning fog burning off the field. And to make it work, Lucy said, eyes fixed on the road, she needs more land, specifically, your land. When we reached the county building, Bruce was already waiting with a dolly stacked high with documents. We took over an old conference room and spread every file across the table. And then I saw it, exactly what I feared most. And the weapon I'd been hoping to find, a revised map filed 3 years ago bearing my forged signature, a date stamp that didn't match county standards, parcel numbers that violated the indexing format I helped design, and most damning of all, a certification seal I never approved. Bruce looked up from the folder. Jack, if we send this to the DA, this isn't just HOA-level fraud. This is falsifying official government records. She could be looking at 5 years minimum. It gets worse, I said, flipping open the original 1961 map. Look here. The actual boundary of Silver Pines stops 40 feet before my driveway. They've been encroaching on my land for over 15 years. Bruce's eyes went wide. Holy hell. That means the clubhouse, the man-made pond, even Clarissa's own house is sitting on your property? I nodded. And they had the nerve to bring bulldozers to my front gate? Just then, a familiar face appeared through the window. Judge Grace Malora, once my longtime legal partner. Bruce had called her in. If what I've just heard is accurate, she said, this isn't a civil dispute anymore. This is a coordinated campaign of fraud. I shut the folder and looked up, calm but firm. Then it's time to strike back. By the end of that day, I walked out of the county building holding a file thicker than a brick, filled with forged boundary revisions, counterfeit signatures, illegally submitted documents, and a long list of HOA structures built squarely on my land. I didn't just have the truth, I had the law and the experience to wield both like a scalpel. On the way back to the farm, I called Sheriff Hank Dobson, a man who'd handled dozens of land disputes with me over the past 20 years. His voice came through the phone, deep and clipped. Let me get this straight, Jack. They used fake documents, forged your signature, and now they've got a bulldozer parked across your property? That's right. And I've got all the evidence. A file thick enough to crush a man's desk. Waiting for you. A pause. I'm on my way. 15 minutes. Lucy wasn't sitting still either. She went back into Silver Pines, knocking, door to door, telling the truth. Not with rage, but with the calm, compelling voice of a seasoned journalist. She showed them the videos, the documents, and told stories of past victims. The result? By the time I pulled back into the farm, over 20 residents were already gathered on my porch. They didn't come to stop me. They came to bear witness. 5:57 a.m. The bulldozers roared again. A fresh machine lowered its blade to the gravel edge of my driveway. Clarissa Moore stood dead center in the road, dressed in a sharp blue suit, clipboard raised like she was commanding an assault on Normandy. I marched forward, the file in my arms gripped like a loaded rifle. "Clarissa!" I shouted. She turned, that smug half-smile still plastered on her face. "You're just in time, Jack. Final chance to sign the HOA compliance agreement, pay the $25,000 fine, and stop the drama." I raised my file high. "I'm not signing anything except your asset seizure order." Right then, Sheriff Hank Dobson's cruiser rolled up, red and blue lights flashing like it was the 4th of July. Clarissa paled. "Hello, Clarissa." Hello, Jack. Hank stepped out slowly, each step like a gavel slamming down. Who here has a permit for road demolition? We're the HOA. We have authority. No, you have authority over HOA-managed land, not a private agricultural estate inherited since 1961, and you certainly don't have the right to present documents with a forged signature from the county surveyor. Clarissa held up the same set of fake documents I'd already examined. Hank flipped through the pages, his brow tightening. This is your signature, Jack? I barked a laugh. I swear on my home it's not. And that wire there, not my stroke, not in 30 years of civil service. Hank nodded. He turned to Clarissa. I'm impounding all construction equipment, documentation, and temporarily suspending HOA activity in the disputed zone. Also, he tapped his radio gently. I'll need 2 backup units. This is no longer civil. It's criminal. The crowd murmured. Phones rose into the air, cameras recording. Among them stood Mark Langston, an elderly man who Clarissa had once forced to sell his garden home for aesthetic violations. He stepped forward, voice shaking but resolute. I spent 40 years growing flowers, and a fake HOA letter wiped it all out in one summer. I had no idea. They forged the documents that destroyed me. I put a hand on his shoulder. Today, you take back your dignity. And your flowers, if you want them. Clarissa stumbled back, about to say something, but then a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped a man in a sharp suit, eyes cold as steel. Clarissa. The investors want the update by 3 p.m. Why the hell are the bulldozers idle? Clarissa stammered. James, don't, please. Too late. I turned to the crowd, raising my real maps and verified documents. Folks, listen up. 15% of Silver Pines, Clarissa's house, the clubhouse, the pond, are all built on my land, and I have every shred of proof, certified, signed, and witnessed. The crowd erupted. Some gasped, some dropped their phones. Others turned to confront Clarissa directly. Clarissa once blocked my road, but now the whole community was blocking her way out. As Sheriff Hank signaled his deputies to begin inspecting the construction equipment, I stepped into the crowd. In my hands was an enlarged satellite map, marked with red survey flags and boundary lines. Beside me stood Lucy, live streaming the entire thing with a phone clipped to a microphone. Folks, look closely. This red outline is the original boundary from 1961, confirmed by my father and me. I turned the map and pointed at the clubhouse, the pond, and what I'd been waiting for, Clarissa's mansion. All of that sits on my land. And the original building permits the HOA submitted? They're fake. The crowd buzzed like a landslide was rumbling through. James Prescott, the man from the black SUV, made a move to leave, but I stepped in front of him. Leaving so soon, James? Gonna let your wife handle the fallout? He sneered. You got nothing. This is just an administrative oversight. I nodded, then held up a printed packet in full color. Then how about this? Westridge Skyline, your company's project proposal filed 3 months ago. Plans to build a mall, condos, and a parking garage on the land I'm standing on. James paled. How the hell did you get that file? Dumbest question of the day. I was the county's surveyor. I'm the guy you forged a signature from to legalize your fake maps. At that moment, Barbara Whitaker, a longtime HOA board member and Clarissa's former close friend, pushed forward. She held a printed copy of the documents I'd just shared. Clarissa, you told us this was just a fence line dispute. You didn't say a word about selling out the whole community for a shopping mall project. Clarissa stammered, searching for words. I was trying to secure long-term financial growth for everyone. No. You were trying to get your name back on the cover of Business Monthly. Sheriff Hank raised his hand. Jack, how do you want to handle this? I looked around at the crowd. They weren't just passive residents anymore. They were victims, and I was the one holding the key to justice. I'm not suing individual homeowners. They were deceived, just like I was. But I am filing suit against the Silver Pines HOA, Clarissa, James, and every board member involved. in document forgery, property damage, and attempted land theft. However, I'm offering this. Each homeowner can sign an acknowledgement of historical boundary error and pay a nominal transfer fee, and I'll grant them legal usage rights for the portion of my land their home sits on. Applause erupted. Some people cried. And Clarissa? Head bowed. But when I mentioned the bank record showing transfers from Westridge Partners into her personal account, she looked up, trembling. Jack, please don't. I don't want to. Go to prison. Then you shouldn't have taken my map, forged my name, and rolled bulldozers onto my land. Meanwhile, Lucy missed none of it. Her live stream had racked up nearly 50,000 live viewers. The hashtag HOJustice was now trending on Twitter. Sheriff Hank leaned over. You're making waves, Jack. Not just here. That afternoon, I filed. Suit at the county courthouse. Caroline, my go-to attorney, took the case. We submitted every document, every video, and the original maps. Clarissa and James were urgently summoned. Silver Pines HOA's finances were frozen by court order, and an interim board was established, led by Barbara. On the way home, Lucy drove while I sat in silence. The wind flowed through the open window. I knew we hadn't won yet, but we weren't alone anymore. Monday morning, I opened the gate to my farm like I always did. But instead of roosters crowing, there was the buzz of news helicopters overhead. It had been a week since the bulldozer standoff, and Silver Pines was no longer just a homeowners association. It was a national symbol of power run amok. Lucy pulled up in her old pickup. Jack, CBS, Fox, even CNN want interviews. And that podcast, HOA Horror Stories, too. I looked out toward the horizon. That live stream clip had 12 million views. Footage of me confronting Clarissa, presenting the real map, and the crowd erupting into applause. It had become a meme. But more importantly, other victims began speaking out. Mark Wilkins, a veteran from up north in the county, showed up clutching a file folder, eyes red. They fined me $8,000 for flying an American flag too high, then threatened to sue. I sold my home, moved into an RV. Now I find out Clarissa used a forged map. He wasn't alone. 13 more cases came in to Caroline and me within 48 hours. People evicted over non-compliant fencing, residents whose water was shut off for aesthetic disharmony, even an elderly woman who lost her 60-year home for forgetting to repaint her mailbox. What they called the Silver Pines HOA, I realized, was just one tentacle of a much bigger beast. Clarissa and James Prescott didn't just want my land. They had plans to swallow up the entire stretch of property from Silverdown to the Monroe County line. The urban development plan Bruce and I uncovered revealed their true aim: small gas stations, mobile home parks, even a Baptist church, all targeted for commercial redevelopment by Westridge Partners, quietly submitted to the County Investment Board. I was no longer just a former surveyor. I was the only one who knew enough and was angry enough to stop them. Caroline Bennett came to me with a bold proposal. Jack, we shouldn't just sue them individually. I want the county court to launch a special investigation. As a landowner whose property rights were violated and a professional expert, you can be the lead witness. I nodded. And I want the other victims to testify. Every single one. So the court and the whole country can see what happens when the wrong people get a clipboard and a little power. That evening at Silverdown's Town Hall, over 100 people packed the meeting room. Lucy organized. Bruce handled the presentations, and I stepped up to the podium. No script. I raised my hand and simply asked, how many of you have been threatened, unfairly fined, forced to sell, or pressured by an HOA? More than 70 hands went up. I didn't say another word. They spoke for me. An older woman, eyes glistening with tears. I'm Mabel. I lost the house my father built because I added a kitchen window. Clarissa said it devalued the neighborhood. An elderly man, glasses shaking in his hand. They threatened to take me to court because I kept my late wife's ceramic dog statue in our front yard. Then Clarissa posted it on social media to mock me. The chamber erupted. Monroe County Commissioner banged the gavel. We have enough to launch a formal investigation. I hereby order the temporary suspension of all Silver Pines HOA operations and all affiliated entities. Clarissa? James? Absent. They knew what was coming, and this time they couldn't run. Later that night, I got a call from Channel 6 News. Mr. Morgan, are you aware that Clarissa's mansion is now under legal dispute since it was built on land you never authorized? I sipped my tea, then chuckled. Oh, I'm well aware. In fact, I've already started the paperwork to reclaim it. But I'm planning to turn it into a community center for HOA victims. By the time I got back, Lucy had already set up a mini press conference right on my front porch. Beside her stood nearly 24 Oakwood Hill residents, folks who had all been harassed by this HOA. Some held signs, others filmed on their phones. No one was afraid of Elaine anymore. They'd seen too much. I stepped up the porch steps and looked at Elaine, now stripped of her pretense like a witch unmasked, screaming into a radio, "Initiate Plan B. Don't wait." The moment the bulldozer engines fired up again, I knew it was time for the final strike. Just then, Sheriff Daniel's patrol car pulled off the dirt road, red lights spinning, and screeched to a halt in the middle of the crowd. Elaine's face, drained as he stepped out, tall, stern, and holding the folder I'd handed him personally that morning. "Shut those machines down," Daniels barked. The bulldozer operator looked back, hesitated, then pulled the lever. The engine roared, then fell silent. Elaine tried to salvage what was left. "This is an internal HOA matter. You don't have jurisdiction." The sheriff raised, the old survey map and forged documents, his voice steady. Jack Morgan was the county surveyor here for 30 years. His signature was forged. "This document is evidence of county-level fraud, and that's a criminal offense," the crowd murmured. Some neighbors squeezed each other's hands. Elaine visibly began to tremble. I stepped forward, my voice as steady, as stone. "This isn't just about me. 15% of Oakwood Hill, including Elaine's own house, was built on my family's land because of a survey error in 2008. I have the original maps, archived records, and proof." I handed Barbara, a former HOA board member, a satellite photo with red and blue boundary lines clearly marked. She looked stunned. Elaine still tried to fake composure. "This is just a legal misunderstanding. We can resolve this internally." "No." "Elaine," I cut in, "you used the HOA as a weapon to ruin people's lives, and now it's time to pay." Right then, a sleek black SUV rolled in. Out stepped a sharply dressed man. James Prescott, Elaine's husband and president of West Grove Development. "Elaine, what the hell are you doing? The investors are waiting on the report." The crowd went silent. Elaine turned sharply, whispering, harshly, "James, not now. Too late." Her husband had just confirmed their scheme to build a commercial complex, right on my land. Lucy lifted her phone and played video interviews from other victims. Mark Ruffalo, who lost his rose garden after being pressured to sell. Ms. Linda, fined $5,000 for having an unapproved bench on her lawn. Each testimony was a nail in the coffin of Elaine's reign. Sheriff Daniels stepped forward, his tone unwavering. "Elaine Prescott, I'm asking you to come with me to headquarters to answer for document forgery and criminal trespass." Elaine resisted, but no one backed her up. The bulldozer crew took off their hard hats and vests. The HOA guards walked away. James, silent, dialing a lawyer. As Elaine was escorted away, I didn't feel triumphant, just relieved. We had reclaimed justice, not just for me, but for every neighbor who'd been silenced, bullied, and humiliated for years. But I knew this wasn't the end. There was more to fix, more to protect. But at least today, we won a major battle. And the most powerful, HOA Karen in the county, finally bowed her head. 6 months after what locals now call the Bulldozer War, Oakwood Hill was no longer a pretentious ant colony of faux decorum and power. It had become a symbol. I never thought moving back to my grandfather's land would ignite a movement. But that's exactly what happened. The very night Elaine was arrested, residents held an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. For the first time, no scented candles, no organic juice, just anger, tears, and the truth. Elaine was ousted on the, spot. Barbara Winters, once under her thumb, stood up to take her place, pledging to rebuild the HOA from the ground up. And me? I went back to what I'd wanted most, peace. But this time, it wasn't solitary peace. I built a private access road to the main street. The old driveway, once the center of our battle, was repaved, lined on both sides with trees planted by Oakwood Hill residents as an apology. Lucy helped me rebuild the old horse barn into a community garden. And the first person to plant there? Old man Mark Ruffalo. He replanted the rose variety that Elaine once destroyed. We didn't stop there. Bruce, my old friend, helped me establish a county ethics committee on land use, with me as chair. We introduced the Morgan Code, a policy requiring all HOAs to disclose permits, surveys, and banning arbitrary fines. It passed unanimously. And I swear I've never seen a bunch of county officials clap that long in my life. I didn't demand the land that had been wrongly built on. Instead, I made a simple offer, a symbolic $1,000 fee, to legally transfer proper usage rights. No homes get torn down, no one gets evicted, but no one gets bullied again either, they agreed. Nearly every homeowner came to shake my hand. One middle-aged man, voice shaking, said, "I used to think you were just a crank. Now I tell my kids that growing up to be like you would be something to be proud of." Elaine and James Prescott were indicted for forgery of public documents, criminal trespass conspiracy to seize private property. They lost their positions, their assets, and their reputations. But most of all, they lost the community they once looked down on. At our neighborhood BBQ, held right in front of my house, over 100 people showed up. No fences, no residents-only signs. Just burgers, laughter, and kids running through the garden. Barbara arrived holding a folder. 3 other HOAs just passed new charters based on ours. They're calling it the Morgan Reform. Lucy stood beside me, smiling. You did what the whole system was too scared to. You turned the HOA from a weapon into a tool for protecting people. In the end, I lost the old driveway, but I gained a community. I lost quiet, but I gained respect. And if anyone ever asked me, was it worth it? I'd point to the growing trees lining my new driveway, each one a story, a scar that's healing, and say, worth more than anything I've ever done. I once thought retirement meant stepping back. I was wrong. In a world where a fake document can crush an honest life, stepping back isn't peace, it's surrender. I didn't fight for a driveway. I fought for my grandfather's memory, for justice for dozens who were pressured to sell their homes, and for the kids in the neighborhood so they'll grow up knowing that justice doesn't require power, only truth and grit. If anyone asks me today where the true boundary lies between house and community, I'll say, it's the line you're willing to stand on, not just for your land, but for the people who live beside you.